research to our exotic research conference. Sorry about the belated beginning, but we wanted to get as many of you together in one place as we could. And I think we've established that here for this morning, and we hope that it will continue to grow and build throughout the day. Our first speaker this morning is Brian David Andersen, who is the inventor of the quantum disk, which is a fascinating technology, which of course you'll be learning more about here shortly. It's utilized for pain relief. It improves the taste of any liquid that it is used and placed around. The absorption capabilities of the liquid are improved through a alteration at the molecular structural level. Mr. Andersen also has a what he's calling a quantum purifier, which is a water purification system that hopefully in the future will literally create water independence for city, municipal, and world communities. We look forward to some exciting developments in this technology. So with no further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Brian David Andersen.
Thank you. If you think you know the foundations of science, you think you know the foundations of chemistry, you probably don't. I'm going to challenge every foundation, every basis that you have for science. It all started for me as a journalist. That's how I'm trained. I went to University of Missouri School of Journalism. I was a photojournalism major. I worked for newspapers, magazines, etc. for many years. And in 1988, I got out of the journalism business. I also did underwater television productions. I made the first underwater housings for broadcast television cameras, and they were used in the 88 and 92 Olympics. And so about 1988, I went through a lot of shifts, etc. I wanted to get into more of the alternative energy. I got turned on by room temperature superconductors, etc. And with no training in science, or I have no chemistry training whatsoever, I went into the area. That was granted, it was very much of a weakness, but it was also a strength, because I was not brainwashed into any type of system. I just went in questioning everything that I could possible. And in 1980, I came across the work of Pat Flanagan, and he had a product that's a silica additive that you put drops into a gallon of distilled water. It changes the atomic structure, lowers what's called the surface tension, the ability of the water to adhere to itself. And I really got turned on by his product. I really thought it was something that had some value and et cetera. And it was also then, now, since my research over the past years, I found that it was related to Willard's water. He basically took the basic concepts of Willard's water, found out what it was, and then duplicated it himself. But I knew I could also, intuitively, I knew I could come up with some sort of device to also do the very same type of phenomenon as putting drops into the water and make it some sort of device. And it would then make the person independent. They would not have to be dependent upon someone always putting drops in. You always have to go back to the source of where you're getting your silica additive, whether it be Flanagan or Willard or whatever. So then that started a whole 2 years of type of research, etc. And we'll get in then to some of the basis of this research, and it goes into the chemistry tables, and we'll get at that in just a moment. So the first device that I came up with was a suitcase full of Tesla coils and various types of substances and et cetera, and it worked. And I've eventually reduced the size of that device. And until now, if we go ahead and we'll kill the lights, please. And it's now we come to the latest one, but it was a box about 6 inches in square. Then I got it down to a small little box, 2 to 3 by inches, and it was electronic. It put a sound signal out through some various compounds and elements, and it was changing surface tension. And we proved this scientifically with surface tension tests. So this is now the latest, per se, phase. It's called the quantum disk FVY. It's a 1-inch plastic disc. Previous to this time also, it was a 1 inch, but it was a little bit thinner and white. Previous to this, it was a metal disc, 3 inches in diameter, also 1 inch in diameter. So it's going through a lot of evolution and revolution, per se. A quantum disk has been proven scientifically to give off oxygen. We have done mass spectrometer tests. The University of Florida was involved, and they then analyzed various types of substances, water, other solid substances with a mass spec, and also positron emission tests, and they found a 110% increase in oxygen when a substance was put in within anywhere between 6 inches to right on top of the disc. So on the disc here, what you do is take a liquid on your glass. The disc does not have to go inside of the water, just within 6 inches of it. One of the sort of interesting story was when they were doing the positron, or when they were doing a mass spec test in Florida, they had an ELAN 5000 mass spec device, and they set up the waters. They just did tap water, and they did their initial testing, looked at it untreated. Then they brought the disc in. This was my old metal disc. They put the disc underneath the water, and this was about 3 feet away from the device itself. This is somewhere around a $500,000 device. They looked up, and they saw the numbers were spinning on this mass spec. And it totally knocked everything off calibration. They had to fly somebody in from California and recalibrate the mass spec. And the only thing that they could really then figure out is that there was so much oxygen molecules coming off of the disk that it over-amped or over-zapped their sensors. So then the next test they did, they of course took the disk outside and then brought the water in, and then that's when they found that there was a 110% increase in the intensity of the oxygen molecule. So again, what you're basically talking about then is putting structuring. Your molecule is either in atomic chaos or it's in atomic structure. And if liquids are in some sort of chaos, they have a bite taste to them. And when they are in structure, they have a smooth, very silky type of taste to it, which means the surface tension is lowered. Example of how also the disc works on the human body. Have now countless types of testimonials from many people. I'll give you 2 examples, and this is only 2 of now going on thousands. I actually give you 3. They're the most dramatic. It does not work for everybody. We now have probably about a 90% type of, per se, effective rate, success rate for the quantum disk. One kind of humorous story, this actually even goes back to my old multitrans, the old square box that had the electronic signals on them, or the sound signals. A person bought one from Las Vegas from me, and he gave it to a friend who had ulcers. And so they had an acute episode of the ulcer flaring up, so he put the box was about the same size as this little changer I have, and he put the box on his area that was giving him problems. And so the next morning he woke up, and the guy talked to him and said, "Hey, what happened?" He said, "Well, yeah, the ulcer condition is, the pain's all gone." But he also had something that he hadn't had in a long time. He had a raging erection. And so he had been treated for impotency professionally. And so I said, "Well, why are you calling me? This is kind of interesting." So, "Well, I have to buy another one from you." And I said, "Why?" He said, "Well, the wife won't let him or the multitrans out of the house for 2 days." Now, I've asked for testimonial letters, and I can't understand why they haven't given them. But so that's one dramatic thing. Again, what it's doing is increasing the blood flow to any type of area. I also have a weightlifting coach. He's now an assistant coach with the U.S. Olympic weightlifting team. Name is Mike Bergner. He's out of Fallbrook, California. He played football for Notre Dame in the 1960s, ripped out his knee in his senior year, and is now in his mid-50s, and is now a replacement for a knee, or a candidate for a knee replacement. And he was taking anti-inflammatories twice a day for going on 3.5 years. And he started then using just strictly the necklace form, as you can see here. You can't see my dot. So you can see the chain there. He started wearing just the necklace only. He didn't even put it on his knee. And he now has not taken any anti-inflammatory medicine whatsoever in 1.5 years. And sometimes it'll flare up on him, so then he'll put the disc directly on the knee. Another person by the name of Becky Parth out of Tennessee, she was having a tremendous amount of back pain, and she used what is called the Mylar wrap. You see the necklace here? We're going to go to that. When you put the disc near any type of metal, the metal will also take on the characteristics of the disc. So inside of this cloth wrap is Mylar. So when you put the disc near the Mylar, then you have almost like a huge disc itself. So she put this small one on the top around her back, and within about 10 minutes the pain was gone. She was already scheduled for an MRI, so she went to her MRI, and they found that she had a perforated disc and also a cracked disc in her lower back. So they said, well, they gave her all this prescription for pain medication, and they said, well, they were amazed, why are you not, rolling on the ground? Why are you not in this excruciating pain? Well, she didn't even want to get into it. She didn't even tell them. She said, well, and she never filled any of her prescriptions. And so then they did another one in about 45 days, and most of the perforation, the crack was totally gone, and the perforation had reduced substantially. And the doctors were amazed. And I'm supposed to get all the results from all these tests. She's getting the results, and I'm supposed to get an outstanding testimonial letter from this. Going back on this is a VOC Labs out of Florida. They did a surface tension test of water treated by the disc, and it was also conducted by James Aker, who is certified in the state of Florida as a laboratory technician, laboratory procedure type of person. He conducted the test, and the gentleman that signed this paper also then reviewed and saw what James was doing. So it was overviewing. So I wanted two people there. I just didn't want to have a technician doing it. I wanted two professional people to verify. So we had VOC is considered one of the top laboratories in Florida, and then done by a certified technician for Florida. And what this piece of paper then says is that the initial water was at 67 dynes per centimeter. And then, which means it was fairly much atomic chaos. There may have been some sort of surfactant in the liquid. Most water that comes out of the tap has 76 dynes per centimeter. But then it lowered the surface tension from 67 to 54 dynes per centimeter in 60 seconds. So it's almost acting the same way as detergent soap. That's all the detergent soap does, is lower surface tension. So then on to this topic also is when you take the disc and place just the disc on the wash machine, not in the water, just on the wash machine. Many persons right now are reducing their clothes soap to 1 teaspoon. And some people are not using any clothes soap at all. Mike Bergner, the one earlier I was talking about, the coach, in fact, his wife washes her clothes with 1 teaspoon and he washes his with none. Although you are going to, on some wash machines, you'll get the residual effect. There will be residual soap left over. But again, much better for the environment, etc. And again, we also have the necklace form. You can see the close-up here of it. And most everybody has seen this disc on the booth that I have. This is also a dramatic illustration of surface tension and what it does do, especially for plants. This is 2 roses bought on the same day. And let's see if my infrared is gone. There we go. If we can see that now. Day 1 here of 2 flowers bought on the same day. 1 was placed into water that was not treated, and this is just straight out tap water. And then 1 was placed into water that was treated by the disc for 3 minutes. Or actually, this is the old multitrans that actually did this. And so you can see then day 2, day 4, and day 5. And I stopped it right there because I didn't feel that people would believe me. But this flower, actually, the one on the right, went on for 11 days. And this has been repeated by many, many persons, this same type of test. Also taking flowers or plants that seemed almost to be dead, or they considered dead, put them in water that's been treated, and they'll come back to life. So again, what you're doing with the atomic structuring, the proper type of water, absorption will take place almost immediately. And so this also is a good illustration of how the human body also works. Remember, we do not have teeth in our stomach. At least I don't. And so after it leaves the mouth area, all we're trying to do is then absorb into our bodies. That's all the body can do, is just literally absorb it. It's like a napkin or something absorbing water. That's all we're doing is absorption. And if the liquids that you are taking, or also the food, is atomic chaos or with high surface tension, you're not going to absorb it. The surface tension of the human body, most digestive juices, is between about 45 to 60 dynes per centimeter. And if you are taking liquids that are any higher, which 99% of the population does do, it goes into the body and it ends up like the flower on the left. No absorption. And you're literally wilting, and it gets all kicked off into the bladder and kidneys. This is also why there's a cutting edge also here of vitamins. For the first time, we're taking these loads and loads of vitamins, but they do not have the proper surface tension. And so what happens, they get kicked off in the bladder and into the kidneys and causing all sorts of problems for kidneys and bladder. And some people, what they think is a heart attack, but in actuality, it's the kidney and tremendous types of stress because it's loaded down with all these minerals and vitamins. People then don't drink enough water, and your body and your kidneys and liver and the bladder are totally overwhelmed by these vitamins. They're not being absorbed. So this, again, also is where the disc helps, that you're changing your water first before you do take your vitamins, or also change your vitamins with the disc, and absorption is going to be almost immediate. And that's one thing also is, again, when you treat water with the disc, immediately, as soon as it hits your tongue, it starts to absorb because it has the proper surface tension. Our bodies work with atomic, or not atomic, but molecular structure. And it has a certain structure that it needs. And anything else you introduce that is not of that structure, the body's going to try to do everything it can to eliminate it. And that's exactly what the flour does too. It's not going to absorb. So at the very least, if it doesn't work on a pain type of basis for people, the very least thing the disc can do is help in the absorption of nutrients and also of water and any type of liquid. Now, this is also the basis of the quantum disc technologies. In 1898, Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater did what was called did clairvoyant observations of the chemical elements. And they started out with hydrogen, and actually with the way the story goes, that they were a parlor party, and people knew that they were doing transcendental meditation, and somebody said, hey, why don't you go do the chemical elements? Why don't you examine them? So just as a lark, at this party, they went into meditation and went in and looked at hydrogen. And they were amazed what they saw. They started 1 level and they went down to 10 levels and saw various levels of the actual element itself. And then this started a whole, basically, passion and profession for them for the next 30 years. And in 1930, they finished off observing the chemical elements. And then they had various types of levels. And then the final level that they saw is here at the bottom, called the ultimate physical atom. Basically, what it is also a photon of light. And so all these other levels were made up of these UPA particles. So hydrogen has 18 UPA particles. So the particle here, each one is male or female, and only oxygen is the one that can go left or right according to their observations. And there's a specific number, and here's like hydrogen had 18, boron 200 of these UPA particles. Uranium has something like 3,000 or 4,000. This is really key to many, many things of the UPA particle, because it has to also do with the discoveries that I did with the table of elements. And so then I developed all of the technologies as multitrans and the quantum disk and et cetera in the laboratory of Cleve Baxter. Cleve Baxter is the foundation of the book called The Secret Life of Plants. And I developed all of my technologies in his laboratory in San Diego. I was then looking through some of the shelves and et cetera in his laboratory, and I found a book dated in 1901, and they put the table of elements on a spiral. And so then I tried to put it on the spiral. It didn't work. I'm not going to go into the spiral here right now because I think it's only illustrative. I'm going to go to what I feel is most important, and it has to do with the sphere. But that started the whole thing for me. And so then I started examining everything in chemistry and the table of elements and et cetera. And then I remembered I had seen this work of Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater in, what was it called, Fate magazine. They had done an article on them, and that started my whole thing of investigating them, their work. So now they discovered 96 basic elements. According to traditional science, there is only 92 basic chemical elements. But according to Annie Besant and Charles Leadbeater, they saw 100 per se elements, but now 6 of them have been known as now as isotopes of various other elements. But they saw 4 extras for sure. And again, they had specific UPA numbers. Between promethium and samarium, they named these elements X, Y, and Z. And so, again, they had a specific type of UPA number, these 4 extra elements. And this is, again, key to how it fits into the normal table also. So they gave specific types of numbers that they had seen in this meditation to this X, Y, Z, and Calon. And again, Calon then fit in between erbium and thulium, and again, with that. So now, the next thing that I ask, here's your standard table of elements that's taught in chemistry classes all over the world. Well, I asked a stupid question. I said, why have they broken away this orange group called the lanthanides? Why'd they break it off? So I started calling chemistry professors around and saying, well, the explanations I got didn't seem to fit in. Some people said, well, it's because of the electron theory that they break it off at this element here of lanthanum, the electron shell shifts. Or they said it has something to do with aluminum. That's why they break it off. I never got the same explanation anywhere. That's what was so weird for me, is I didn't really get the same answer from everybody. You'd think that it would be standardized, but it was not. Although the most standard answer I did get was the electron theory, and that still didn't make any sense to me. The electron theory never has. And so I thought, well, I started then asking around, well, all of these elements in this orange table belong in a proper vertical group. You can see here 1A, 2A, that type of thing, and they all belong in a proper vertical group. So what happens if you put this square table, all these ones here, in their proper vertical group? What does the table look like then? 4 holes. And where were the 4 holes? Exactly where they saw X, Y, and Z. So now we have a balanced table. We can maybe have the top's focused up here. Can you maybe focus that on the bottom so they can maybe see the elements there a little bit better? There we go. See it a little bit better now. So now you had between promethium and samarium, we said before, and between erbium and calon, or erbium and thulium, you have calon. So I renamed these elements. X is Leadbeaterin, Y is Besantin, and Z is Andersenum. I didn't wait for anybody, the committee, to do it. I thought, what the hell, I'm just going to do it. And so now we have a balanced table. It makes a lot more sense. As you can see, fit completely right in. So now we have something to work from a basis of symmetry. Now, again, the square table still doesn't make any sense. Now, at this point, I was going, well, let's think about nature. Nature has to be at work in a very simplistic type of manner. It can't work in a complex manner. Nature does not know logarithmical mathematics. Nature has to work in the most simplest form possible, mathematically and harmonically. It works very, very simply. It doesn't work in the complex ways of the human mind. The mind would like to think that nature works that way, but in reality, it needs to work in very simplistic types of manners. So the most simplistic type of manner, now we have the table there, the most simplistic manner is in the sphere. Which is interesting now is that when Archimedes calculated the value of pi, 3.14, he did it with a 96-sided polygon. Not 92, not 97, not 98, but 96. 96 elements. So again, now we're going about the rhythms of nature. That's the key thing. The rhythms of nature. Not what we try to create, not what we want to try to think it is, but what is the reality, and the reality has to be very simple, and nature has to work in very simple types of ways. And so now when you take 96 and divide it into a sphere of 360 degrees, you come up where it's going to drop every 3.75 degrees. Each element on a sphere will drop at 3.75 degrees. And if you guys out there also, I put this in a paper that's out there, it also starts at 3.75 hertz. Hydrogen starts at 3.75 hertz and makes it very, very simple. Extremely simple. And again, as you can see now, it's all multiplications of 3.75. So if, like on a computer, we will give hydrogen 0, 0. We will give helium 3.75, keep going all the way down. So now we put all the table of elements on the sphere or on the circle. This mimics more of nature. The sphere is much more natural than any square that man could ever make. The elements do not materialize in a linear or sequential manner. The elements materialize in multiples of 7. 7 is a real unique type of number. As you can see here, 7 times 1 equals 7. 7 times 2 equals 14. And 1 plus 4 equals 5. 7 times 3 equals 21. 2 plus 1 equals 3. And as you can see, the sequence goes down here, and you can go to infinitum with this number, and it does the same pattern, 7, 5, 3, 1, 8, 6, 4, and 7 is the only number that does that. All other numbers will either end or they'll go skewed, etc. The only one that comes kind of close to it is 9, but still it has a repetitive pattern. It stops, then you have to repeat it again. 7 is the only number that gives this continuous flow per se. Also, 7 is the only number that will not divide into 360 degrees. So what I did here is I took, if we divided 1 into 360, we got 360. If you divided 9 into 360, then it's 40. So all these numbers were 1 through 9, and this is the number that you came up with when you divided it. Then I just started subtracting. 360 from 180, 180 from 120 is equals 60, and just started subtracting. All this is just a subtraction all the way down, and then the last number you're left with is 43. 4 plus 3 equals 7. Again, playing with the, I don't know if this has any significance, this particular one, but it's again just sort of fascinating what 7 is and how it functions and works. So now when we put the multiple 7s, which means is that it works in a multiple 7 way. It doesn't come in hydrogen, helium, beryllium, that type of thing. It comes in multiples of 7. So when it comes in multiples of 7, it's hydrogen first, male, force, yang. Number 2 is oxygen. Feminine, receptive, structuring. Number 3 is phosphorus. 3 is a compilation of 1 and 2. Phosphorus is one of the only elements that you can put light into it. It absorbs it and then transmits that light at its own frequency. It's male and female. Hydrogen, male. Oxygen, female. Phosphorus, bisexual. And that's when I knew I was on to something with the multiple 7. We're just looking at the first 3. So any type of life form needs to hop into life. Hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus. If you don't have those 3 elements, you do not have a life form. You're just going to have a rock. Inorganic. But if you want something organic, It has to have those three elements as its basis. So now, we look at multiple 7 tables. So we have hydrogen, oxygen, and then phosphorus, titanium, and we go through the table once and then come back and over again, and then per se the second wave then starts off with lithium. And this is a better way to illustrate this. Again, we have the 3 hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus, 1, 8, and 15. But again, what we start off is down here at the bottom will be hydrogen. Then we have oxygen. It's 2625 degrees. And then 2625 degrees on the circle is phosphorus. And then there's titanium, and it goes around. And as it comes up, then it goes to radium, and then goes lithium, etc. So now what's interesting about this, we started out at hydrogen in this area here. And now we've done this multiple 7 per se, or they're now going in 7s at 2625 degrees. And we do 7 turns around the sphere. Your last element, the 96th element, is radon. And then 2625 degrees from radon, the 96th element, is hydrogen. You started out at hydrogen, went through 96 elements on 7 turns, and you've come back to your omega point is where your alpha point was. And again, only 7 does this. You can't do it with 9s, you can't do it with 5s. So again, a multiple 7 table. They do not manifest in a linear type of manner. And this also, if anybody knows anything about music, this also follows any type of harmonics of music. It's multiples of 7. So now here's the whole table, what it looks like square-wise by putting the multiple 7. You can do it either on the sphere, or you can also do it on the table too. And again, it's waves, the 7 waves of elements as they're manifested. This one doesn't show up very well. What you're doing here, I'll try to explain this. You take 7 circles, and I have this back in my booklet there. We have 7 circles. They're all concentric, all going down to a center point. And that's what's, you maybe can see those blue lights back there. It's still a little bit too light. I got to lighten the slide. And so you have 7 circles, and so on the first circle goes hydrogen on the inside circle. The second circle has oxygen, which is a little bit larger, okay? And so I had an AutoCAD program do this for me. I had an AutoCAD operator do this. And so now you can maybe see this a little bit better. So now here's hydrogen, and there's oxygen, phosphorus, and then what the computer operator was supposed to do is continue this around, and he made a mistake and went the opposite way. He mirrored it the other way. He wasn't supposed to do it. I said, why'd you do it? Well, I thought you told me. No, we didn't. So what is it? What does this look like? It's the yin and yang symbol. You can't see it too well. I got to lighten these slides, but this is the basis. The yin and yang symbol comes from the spherical table of the elements. And I have to say, most right now it was lost. I'm sure that the ancients, both in East and West, knew this. It's been lost over the years, and nobody really knows the foundation for the yin and yang symbol, but its foundation is in the table of elements in chemistry. So now, if you can see, again, are we up on our brightest one on the slide projector? Is it up on the top one? Okay. Now here is what it was supposed to look like. Again, it has a flower configuration when you do these 7 concentric circles, and again, the flower configuration, which you also see in many Eastern types of religious symbols and that type of thing. But again, it's the table of elements in its proper form. But now this is one-dimensional. This is a one-dimensional form of it. And again, what you can do now, this is on the one-dimensional form, you can make all sorts of geometric patterns. We've played over it, and this is just one of them. And you can do the mandalas and et cetera, all come from this, again, spiraling 7 table with 7 concentric circles. And now what we've done is taken that concentric circle, and circle 1 and circle 7 are the same. Circle 2, circle 6 are the same size, and circle 3 and circle 5 are the same. So now what we've done is to make it into a sphere. So we now have the harmonic sphere of the elements. And this is, again, nature. It's very, very simple, no complicated mathematics, and nature needs to function in a simplistic type of manner. And again, this is a different viewpoint now. Again, hydrogen starting here and moving around to oxygen, phosphorus, and all the way through, and then radon being the last element here, and then the alpha omega point being the same. Now, not only does it apply to the table of elements, but ladies and gentlemen, this is also the simplest form and the lowest form of what we know of matter. Matter is harmonics and light. You have various densities of light. They are shaped by harmonic tones into various configurations, and the simplest way to do that is in the sphere. So at the smallest level, we have molecules. Molecules that are shaped by light and sound. There are no electrons, there are no protons, there are no neutrons, there are no atoms. Good theory, makes sense of how it came about, but it has absolutely no application to reality. And I realize people have built careers on atoms and electrons, but that's all it is just a theory. And it doesn't make any sense as far as nature. Nature has to work very simply, and simply is in a molecule made from 96 tones, moving light. Simple, simple, simple. And to also further prove this point, there has now been, well, it was developed in the 1930s, a microscope called the ultra-dark field. It was funded by the Rockefeller Foundation, and basically we have a dark field microscope out here that's doing blood, and its magnification is somewhere around, the maximum is about 2,000 magnification. Well, this microscope built in the 30s has a 55,000 magnification in dark field. And it all has to do by the way that you light up the molecules, you light up your source. So you have the magnification, but the key thing to it also is how you light it. And there's only right now 2 people in the world that know how to do this, and there's only one functioning microscope. And so this is also dramatically, you're about ready to see a videotape of the ultra dark field microscope. They originally also used it to supposedly look at various other things related to syphilis back in the 1930s and 40s. And then they found, quote, a safer way of looking at the, when they say virus, they weren't really looking at viruses, they're looking at light reflection of syphilis. So by 1950, this microscope had much disappeared. And so a friend of mine that also did the surface tension test, James Aker, he had heard about this microscope and found a technician who had worked on it in the 1930s. The guy is now 85 years old. And they rebuilt this ultra dark field microscope. So what you're about ready to see on the videotape is aloe vera, fresh cut aloe vera, right off the plant, a little bit diluted water, and you're looking at light reflected from molecules. You're not looking at bubbles, you're looking at light reflected from molecules. So if we could go ahead and turn off the slide projector, and let's start the videotape. Now what also we're going to, this is a untreated aloe vera. They then took the aloe vera off, put it on the quantum disk for approximately 3 minutes and brought it back. So what you're looking at now are molecules. And again, circular. That's not debris, that's not bubbles. Those are molecules. And again, circular in form, and as you can see, they're almost transparent. There are no atoms, there are no electrons, there's no neutrons there. It's mainly light and sound that you're seeing. So again, you can see now the spacing of them, the size of them. Now, when we put that on the disc, you'll see it. That's the only difference has been here is now this is treated. The size of the molecule has been substantially reduced by the quantum disk, which means its absorption is going to be almost immediate. So again, it's light. That's a light source. So again, what you can see now, they have what's called the Brownian movement has increased dramatically, and the size of the molecule has been reduced dramatically. And you only can reduce it if it's in a simplistic form, and that's just light and sound. You can't do it if it's all chock full of electrons and neutrons and atoms and all that sort of stuff.
Talk a little bit about why it's reduced.
Because again, the quantum disk gives off oxygen, and it's reorganized the molecule to reduce in size. Before, what we were looking at is the molecule was somewhat in chaos, and now this has reduced the size, and again, this is going to absorb almost immediately into the body. Okay, that's good. We'll go ahead and turn off the videotape and we go back to the slides.
Where are these microscopes now?
There's only one in the whole world right now. It is in Florida, and they are for sale too. So actually, I take that back. There are two that are functioning right now. One is in Oklahoma. There's one in Oklahoma, and there's one in Florida.
What magnification was that?
That one particular one was 30,000. And the 50,000 really still does not make a very good video, but then if you can imagine just seeing that molecule super, super close. And once you do that, though, too, again, the molecule is transparent. You can't, there's impossible for any electrons or neutrons or the atoms to be there.
What's the so-called electron microscope size?
Remember, the electron microscope, they have to gold plate it to have it work, which basically what they're looking at is debris. So all these atomic accelerators and et cetera, what they're doing is looking at the debris of the molecule. The light, photon light, has been broken up, shattered, and all they're seeing is debris. They're not seeing any type of electron. They're not seeing any type of proton. They're just looking at debris.
How does this microscope function?
Again, it all has to do with the way the placement of the light is and the magnification. And the placement of the light right now, as I said, there's only two people that know how to do it, and they're the ones selling the microscopes. So again, as I said, the microscope is you can purchase it for about $35,000. Yes.
Is that similar to the Rife microscope?
Rife does not do dark field. This is dark field. We're looking at a 50, it's like, again, looking at this blood out here, but the magnification and the lighting is totally different. Or it's highly much more magnified, and the lighting system is a little bit different and a lot more intensified. That's all. The key thing is you can get that light reflected off the molecule. Yes?
George Merkel has a microscope for mitochondria.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the same or is it
Oh, it's much more powerful because, again, you're looking at molecules, not at mitochondria. You're looking at molecules.
okay, I used the wrong word.
Yeah.
Mitochondria, sorry.
Yeah, well, you're still, again, you're looking at molecules here. And,
Subatomic.
well, yeah, that's where, again, is he looking at a creature or is he looking at debris? That's the question. So, again, what's key about this microscope is that you are looking at it per se live. And in electron microscopes, they've got to gold plate it before they can look at it. Yes?
What's the length of the effect
It really depends. Most water, according to the positron emission tests we did, is that the water molecule has been permanently changed. There is permanently alterations. Now, I've noticed, and most people have noticed, that the taste is not as soft and per se pure after about 72 hours. Then all you have to do is just add the disc again. Yes, back there.
With the electron microscope, you say they gold plating before they color the electron.
Right.
The molecule is made up of light frequencies or reflections of light. What's the molecule made up of again?
Okay, again, what I'm saying is the molecule is made up of light, and that light is being shaped by harmonics.
Okay, and my question is, what is the debris? If there's gold plating in it, and then you say
Well, when you shatter that molecule, you're going to get some sort of debris and light, and that's basically what I think they're doing, and that light becoming per se matter when it's condensed enough. So they're just seeing the shattering of the molecule. They're seeing the debris after the molecule has been shattered. It is now, all they're seeing is the debris left over. And it's not an electron, it's not a proton, neutron, or whatever. It's just debris. It has nothing to do per se with reality of what's functioning per se at the matter level. Yes?
Have they tried any different types of light sources, infrared, black
Yeah.
light, to see?
Yeah, that's what they're doing now. Is that back in the 30s and 40s, they didn't have all these exotic lights, and now that's another whole area for this microscope to be looking at different lights. Yeah, and again, it's such a wide thing here. All right. So, again, based upon the mathematics and the geometry, and also this dark field microscope, I feel very confident when I say no electrons, no neutrons, no protons, no atoms. Back here. No, because again, you're looking at the molecule level. Well, and see, that's where, again, I kind of differ from the whole group, is that I don't think there's such a thing as viruses. They're looking at there's really no such thing as a virus, per se. If you remember back in the 1980s about the HIV virus, they had illustrations of the HIV virus in magazines that it all had dagger-like types of things. Well, they've never photographed it. And the one HIV virus that was photographed by Gallo has now been proven to be a fraud. That's one of the biggest news cover-ups I've ever heard, is that the HIV virus was frauded by Gallo. He should be in jail for fraud because he took a virus or something that was seen under a microscope, virus or not, but this substance under a microscope in the 50s, and computer enhanced it and said it was the HIV virus. So again, the whole concept, when you start looking at the molecular level like this rather than atoms and molecules, you also, it's kind of changed my thing about viruses and does it really cause diseases, and we'll get into that in a little bit too also. So now an extension also of this, again, I also have this paper that's available in the back for those people that kind of gives you basic foundations. I'm going to be adding to this. There's also some things that are in here that are already kind of outdated, but this gives you a real good basic foundations for this. I normally sell these for $35, and they're available for $25 here at the conference. And again, it goes into a lot of things that we've discussed here and even more. It goes into more of the sound, hertz, and that type of thing. This is now also an extension of the quantum disk, is that through a friend I heard about a device. In the 1960s, General Atomics needed a pure water type of system. And so they put two technicians on this job to have pure water, but they couldn't get the flow rates to what they needed in nuclear power plants. And so these two technicians came up with this system, though. What it does is it duplicates nature again. We go back to nature. It creates a, per se, condensed cloud inside a device. And inside of here, there are 7 trays, and each tray is somewhat convexed up. And so the condensation water gathers on the top and then flows down on the side and collects. So all that comes up condensed with a low heat of 170 degrees, not 220 like distilling, but low heat, the only thing that gathers at the top is hydrogen and oxygen, and that's it. All the other contaminants are left behind. So then you create a water that is 3 parts per million. And that is much cleaner than anything that's on Mount Everest. And so they tried, the two technicians, they said, hey, why don't we turn this into a system, even though you can't get the flow rates for nuclear power, why don't we turn this into a system? It could make, this was developed in San Diego, so we could turn San Diego into a lush garden. I mean, we could export water, because this one, a large system or a large or small system, It can produce, this particular small system right here produces 5 gallons a day. With a system that's 200 foot in diameter, and say we build 40 units that are 200 foot in diameter, it would make San Diego awash in pure water. And so the Bechtel Corporation came in and looked at this, recommended to the County Board of Supervisors that they study this, and because of politics in the 1980s, they didn't do it. And in fact, one of the persons who was there was a Board of Supervisors, a man by the name of Roger Hedgecock, and then he became mayor, and then he resigned as mayor, and now he has a radio show. And so now I enter the picture later on down the line here, about a year ago, and the person who developed this by the name of John Petrick, he was then also then given the rights to the patent to do this, and he wanted to develop a small system, but he needed to have computer controls for purity, the temperature, and everything. Basically, it was almost like somewhat of a rocket engine to control. Well, he didn't have to go very far to find the person to do the computer controls. The father of his son-in-law worked for NASA and did exactly that. He had been a computer control engineer for NASA, worked on the Apollo program and space shuttle and et cetera. So they started collaborating, and then they got it to a certain form, a level, and that's when I entered the picture, and I said, look, your water molecule is pure, but it doesn't have the right surface tension. So we started then putting my disk on their units. And again, this has been a onesie-twosie type operation. So then we built a unit that had a compact electronic controls. And that's what you see out here in the display area, and this is what this is. So to dramatically demonstrate this, now I was, through connections, I went on the Roger Hedgecock show and demonstrated the quantum disk. It was kind of interesting, too, is that there was a lady there that was doing hot sauces before me, and she had written a book on hot sauces, but she had also worked with a nuclear physicist on collaborating on a book. I didn't know this till afterwards. And so they talked about the hot sauces and et cetera, and then we did 2 treated and untreated hot sauces. They did a taste test, and they could dramatically taste the difference between treated and untreated hot sauces. So then afterwards, I said, well, after the show was over with, I said, look, I got this device that what you can do is you go gather some water from Mission Bay in San Diego, and you also pee into the bottle and put it into the system, and I'll drink it on the air. He said, you're on. So that's exactly what we did. This is Jimmy Valentine. And he's holding Roger Hedgecock's pee and water from Mission Bay. And so we then set it up, put it into the holding bottle, and let it do through a gravity flow. Now this is exactly what you do in an emergency situation. Earthquake happens, the flood happens, whatever it is, an emergency type of situation, you would go get your ditch water, you'd pee in the bottle or whatever you needed to do, and you'd flow it through the system. What comes out, it has an ultralight or a ultraviolet light, and it has a charcoal filter system, plus then all the chemicals are removed by the evaporation. The water that you get is purer than you can get anything on Mount Everest. And so we did that, and then I drank the water on the air, and this is Roger and I afterwards. I made these 2 last slides black and white. It was sort of a symbol type of thing because now this is the former mayor of San Diego. He has been touting on his radio program that he's now had for 12 years about water independence for San Diego. And I didn't tell him at the time before I came on that it was he who was on the Board of Supervisors that ignored this system 15 years earlier and put it into a bureaucratic no man's land 15 years earlier. I reminded him afterwards. And here he's been clamoring for water independence. And I was on his show in June, and I haven't heard a word from him since. So the quantum purifier system, right now, the technology is available to make Earth a lush garden in all urban and agriculture areas. The only reason why is because of greed and politics that it will not come about. We have the technology right now to solve all of our water needs ever for the planet Earth, and the moon and whatever else too. Because again, it all comes from salt water, wastewater, urine, dishwater, it doesn't matter, lake water. We can have any water type of source. And the quantum purifier will make a 3 parts per million water molecule and absolutely pure. And with the quantum disk technologies, when you drink this water, it absorbs immediately into your body and hydrates the body almost immediately. Now, we get into the next phase. This is a book from Samuel West. It's called The Golden 7+1. And he was a big influence when I was building the multitrans and all of my technologies. And basically, what Samuel West per se discovered, I feel, is the real key of how the cell works. And that is that every cell of the body has a potassium-sodium per se pump or electromagnetic interaction, or what I feel now is a harmonic action between the molecules of potassium and sodium. And it's very important that that potassium-sodium pump stay balanced. And when it becomes imbalanced, most times what happens is the potassium drops out and the cell becomes sodium. It's a sodium-dominated cell, and it can be sodium-dominated for many, many reasons. Salts, sugars, fats, stress. For most athletes, then it will be pounding on the ground or their athletic activity. And one of the key areas is emotions. I wish I coined the phrase, but I didn't do it. It was a chiropractor out of Dallas. What's the issues in your tissues? And so, the potassium-sodium pump will become imbalanced because of the issues in your tissues, poisons, toxins, etc. And when it becomes imbalanced, the potassium most time drops out, the cell becomes sodium, and then it starts attracting a plasma protein from the blood, and it literally surrounds the cell, as you can see over here on the right. And the cells become separated, and they're literally drowning in their own liquids. And so on the right-hand side is dis-ease. On the right-hand side, you have a balanced pump. The vessels are all dry. The water's flowing through. It comes in the vascular system, through the lymphatic system, and on out. Another thing to have also say is that plumbing, when you bring your water into your toilet, you need to flush it. If you don't flush it, what happens? Bacteria starts to form. The cause of the bacteria there is because it's not flowing. It's not the bacteria. It's because there's no flow, and the potassium-sodium pump is off. So, this condition right here, if you have this condition on the right, means that the sodium-dominated cells, oxygen-deprived, oxygen ions cannot get to the cell. If you have that in your brain, we call it schizophrenia. If you have it in your heart, we can call it cardiac problems. If it's in your subcutaneous tissue, we call it Kaposi. If it's in your lungs, we call it pneumonia. What did I just describe those last two? AIDS. Every disease known to mankind is because oxygen has been deprived from the cells. And it's because of emotions, toxins, diet, stress. There are no such thing as viruses. Take responsibility. It's a great thing to turn yourself into a victim over a virus. Take responsibility of keeping yourself flowing and going. Take responsibility, all of us, including me, have issues in our tissues. And that's why we're here. Process them, work them out. There's no such thing as viruses. Viruses do not cause diseases. Strictly, again, keeping yourself flowing and moving. Remember the Tin Man in Oz? He didn't move, he rusted. And it was very symbolic for the human being also, as the Tin Man and the Wizard of Oz. He didn't move, he rusted. And so when we have bacteria here, it's the same thing. If you don't flush your toilet, per se, you gather bacteria. The bacteria didn't cause the disease, or nor even what they want to call viruses in this area. It didn't cause the disease. The disease was caused because the potassium-sodium pump was imbalanced. And this is also why light therapy, sound, the quantum disk all work. What it's doing is working on the potassium-sodium pump and balancing that pump. And as it balances, then it releases the water into the lymphatic system and on out. And again, balance. It's all balance. That's what yoga means. Yoga means balance. So, yes, question over here? Oh, okay, got 5 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes. Okay. Okay, so right now we're also opening it up to questions. I know there'll probably be many, so go ahead.
What's the purpose of the potassium and sodium in the cell?
Again, it provides a electromagnetic type of pump, and it also is like an activity generator type of thing. Potassium, sodium, there's again like an electrical and yet a base, and they're acting to balance one another out. Another key thing that's also to the cell is in the DNA itself. We always see that DNA helix. The DNA helix is made of phosphorus. That gives me another, so we get a few minutes here. The DNA, we always see that helix, is made of phosphorus. Now, if we remember earlier, we said it was hydrogen, oxygen, phosphorus. Phosphorus is the only element where you can put light into it. It transmits light and then transmits it on its own frequency. And that's what makes up the backbone of DNA. We are nothing but huge transmitting vehicles. That's all we do. Now, we also have the sheath on our nervous system is phosphorus. So what I feel is happening with pain is there is a communication between the phosphorus of our nervous system and the phosphorus of the DNA. And it's faster than the speed of light type of communication. And that's why they're never going to find, per se, the causes of pain or the transmitters of pain, because it's actually interaction between the phosphorus of the nervous system and the phosphorus of the DNA. But we are transmitting constantly, all the time, light, matter, etc. We are transmitting vehicles. And we can do anything we possibly want to. We can levitate. We can generate any type of material we want. We've already demonstrated this several times, and I've already had some people here. I was on a radio station in, 3 minutes? Okay. I was on a radio station in New Zealand. I was in San Diego and was talking about the quantum disk. I said, hey, let's do an experiment. I found out I could do something also. I said, take 2 cups of coffee and put one in the sound studio and one outside the sound studio. And I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to concentrate on the one inside the studio, and I'm going to change its taste. And so we went to a commercial break. I started moving the energy, etc. And I have this all on audio tape. Completely blew them away. The coffee that was near them in the studio was absolutely, totally a different drink than what was outside. And I've done this on several other radio programs. I have also, I can't see the word trained, but I have guided other people to do it. Everybody in this room can do exactly what I did. And some of the people have already done it here. I showed them how to do it. We are transmitting vehicles. That's all we are. We're a series of light. And especially that phosphorus in our body, we can do anything. So now I've challenged every probably concept that is out there popular. And I warned you before in the beginning. So thank you very much, and I hope I've given you something to think about.